So thank you today. I'm Kirsty, obviously. I'm a special needs parent from Newcastle, New South Wales, so I've travelled a bit today. I have one husband who is here today. I have 2 pugs that are at home, hopefully, and 3 kids that I certainly hope are at school right now. And usually I have way too much to do, as we all do. And I'm here to share my experiences as we've travelled the education journey. We've had a largely positive journey so far, which we've been very lucky to have, but it's not over yet, and it has been a long, hard road. So I'll be sharing some strategies, my own stories, tips and advice to hopefully make your journey a little less easier and less daunting. That's the plan. So I want to start by showing a list of diagnoses and disabilities. So I just want first, what is your initial impressions when you look at this list? You know, what are your first feelings on these diagnoses? And do you have a view on what these collection of diagnoses might mean to a single student? And second, I just want you to think about what education setting you feel would be the best fit for this student. Do you feel that they best fit in a special education setting due to the nature and the complexity of their needs? Do you think they could be placed in mainstream with lots of support? So it's just to get your minds thinking about and our own ideas on what disability means. In reality, and look, there is no right or wrong answer here because my son's been through everything. Anyway, so this student has in fact moved through a varied education pathway. It actually began with early intervention through the Royal Institute for Deaf and Blind Children in preschool. And then with an autism diagnosis, he moved through to early intervention and infants with Aspect, which is the New South Wales Autism Association. Then we actually braved mainstream in Year 2. We had quite significant support, which did vary over the years, depending on budgeting and legislation and the varied supports that we were able to get. But most recently, this child has gained a place in a gifted and talented class in a mainstream high school, and that was on merit. Now, this student does have significant support to do that, so he has teachers' aides, assistive technology, and a lot of IEP provisions. But I just want you to think for a moment that I know at the start of the journey, I wouldn't have thought that this child would end up where they are now. So I think it's just important that we never close off our ideas and our thoughts to what might lie ahead. So this is my son. So I gave it away. It was supposed to be a surprise. But I've just given you a potted history of his long and varied education journey. So he's now 14 and he's in Year 8 now in high school. And as stated, he's actually in a gifted and talented class in his local mainstream high school. With a lot of supports. He's also supported in break times with a teacher-supervised social group, so he's helped in the structured and the unstructured times. And he's actually thriving in an environment that appreciates his strengths, yet acknowledges and meets his challenges. And for us, it's actually been the most complete education setting that we've actually found, quite surprisingly. But it hasn't been an easy journey, and we've had to put our own assumptions and expectations to the side to give him the chance to show his strengths and take advantage of every opportunity he's been given. So we've had to move past our own expectations of his diagnosis and see what we could get from there. He has actually been lucky over the years too. I've had several opportunities to talk to the media, which he personally loves, and share his views on life. And you'll see that in this clip. This is actually a film clip for BTN, so Behind the News, the National Kids program last year. Now you'll see that he's a little bit of a wag in this. He's a bit self-confident, but you'll also see some of the challenges that he has along the way, and I hope that it'll just give you a good idea of his personality.
Hello, my name is Kirsty Russell. I am 13 years old and I am on BTN to talk about Albinism Awareness Day. Albinism is where you have no melanin in your skin, so that means your hair's not the usual colour, your eyebrows aren't the usual colour, your eyelashes, your skin, everything. Instead of freckles, you get moles, and you're born with this. You can't catch it and you can't stop it. When I was 11 weeks old, my family noticed I had albinism. One day I got sunburnt, we went to the doctors and they said, he's got albinism. They just diagnosed it. There and then. Oh no, sleep time. With albinism, you cannot get tanned. I'm always this white, which means I have to take extra precautions. as well as wearing long-sleeved shirts. I also have to ensure that my skin is well protected and my eyes as well. This sunscreen helps me from burning, because if I burn, it's not going to be that fun. These glasses are actually tinted because I have major problems with glare. I have 648 vision, which means I'm not legally blind. I can still drive a car if I wanted to, but obviously I can't do that for another 3 years because I'm 13. I can see colour, I can see everything you'd want to see. Yeah, so you can still see McDonald's. Well, your parents might be wishing you didn't see McDonald's. I also have autism, which is why I might have done a little bit of stuttering in my early speaking, but who cares? I'm trying to make it the best as possible. No one else in my family has the condition of albinism. I know I have a new cousin, but I haven't seen her yet, so I can't really diagnose it myself. If she has got albinism, that'd be cool. We could be representatives together. But A, she's a bit young, and B, there's a 99.9% chance that she won't have it. And yes, I made that calculation up myself. My classmates help me a lot. They help me with my work if I can't read it. I usually sit at the front. The teachers are very supportive of me. I have never been treated differently. I've always been a good friend to everyone. I've never been bullied, which is good. I've got a huge fan base. I've been a representative of albinism in Australia ever since the day started up in 2015. I started with presentations, then I went on the radio, then I went on the news. The next year I did some presentations at other schools. The message to people about albinism is, if you're going through a hard time, I say the best thing to do is to stand up for yourself and say, oh, albinos are cool, they're just like you.
If we had have accepted our own assumptions and expectations about his disabilities and diagnoses way back when he was small, he wouldn't have made that video. He would not have found a setting that suits his needs. We were so overwhelmed when we received the diagnosis, and you would have all, I know, probably gone through the same thing, that all we could see were the difficulties and the challenges, and we really struggled at the beginning to see any positives or opportunities at all. And unfortunately, we live in a world that sees disability and diagnosis as deficits. And it's hard to work past that because we're always having to prove that our kids' needs are real. When you think about it, the diagnosis process itself relies on deficits being met to obtain a diagnosis. If you want NDIS funding, you've got to prove need to get your funding and support. And the education system also relies on proof of need to justify special education placements, reasonable adjustments, assistive technology, and other funding and supports. So it's actually no wonder when you think about it that we can be overwhelmed by the challenges and we can forget to look to our kids' strengths. But it's really important to not let your child or their education options be defined by their diagnosis. You know, we shouldn't feel trapped in a single setting or on a single education path. Our kids don't usually fit neatly into an education box. Even Xander doesn't. We've had to work really hard to help him out. And to be honest, when you think about it, the world really isn't made for our kids. But that doesn't mean that they don't belong. What it means is that we need to put our own assumptions of capacity and capability to the side and challenge those around us to do the same. And one way to challenge the assumptions is to adopt a strengths-based approach. And this has actually been the key to our own positive education journey. And it's helped us encourage schools to value the strengths of interests of our son and to work to help them. So the first one is to focus on strengths and interests. And I think it's important to see whether they can be incorporated across the curriculum. So for instance, Xander struggles with maths. He's not your typical autistic sort of maths savant or genius. He really struggles with maths. But he loves history, and he seems to perform better when historical events or measurements are used to demonstrate mathematical concepts. So he thrived learning Roman numerals, and he's more engaged when historical settings are used in problem-solving exercises, which allows him to demonstrate an understanding that he wouldn't otherwise show. It makes sense to focus on strengths and interests when it comes to our kids' education, and it's up to us to help the school understand sort of what they're interested in if it's not necessarily clear to the school. The next thing we can do is to recognise learning preferences. So my son is really visually interested despite his vision impairment, which can be quite an interesting conundrum. He prefers to get his information from reading and from watching things rather than for listening because he has auditory processing issues due to his autism. So we've struggled in the past when he's had auditory testing and oral sort of presentations. So if your child tends to absorb information in a particular way, it just makes sense to be clear on this and to encourage the school to provide as much information as they can to suit these learning preferences. We can also create opportunities ourselves to demonstrate strengths. There's nothing stopping us from doing that. So, for instance, you would have seen in the video, but Xander presented a series of talks on Albinism Awareness Day to his local school. So he first did it to his primary school, then he moved to his high school, and he did some local feeder schools as well. Now, this allowed him to introduce himself in his own terms. They got to see the funny, witty kid in the video rather than the child with this baggage of diagnoses. It also showed him to advantage because he loves to talk. It got the schools and the kids to see beyond the diagnosis, to see him. But it also, most importantly, gave him a really big boost in confidence because he loves playing teacher and he loves imparting knowledge. So it makes sense to think about ways that you could showcase your child's strengths and interests to the school in a creative way. Most importantly, and this is not last because it's least important, we need to listen to our children and include them. We need to listen to what they tell us. We should be advocating for them, and we need to take the time to listen to what they want and need. My son is now included in IEP meetings in high school, which has actually introduced him to self-advocacy for the first time. And it's given him the opportunity to set his own goals at school. So it's important where we can to give our children the chance to be part of this conversation and where possible drive it. And that might not always be easy and it might be difficult to start with, but it's something we should always be striving to do. Now, I think the education journey is like a marathon because it's long and it's hard and it's demanding, it's challenging, it's unpredictable, not telling you guys anything new. And like marathon runners, we need courage, energy, resolve and good tactics to succeed and to run the race. Now, I have to be honest, I admit I've never run a marathon before, okay? I did do Relay for Life on the weekend. I walked 38 kilometres and I've got the blisters to prove it, so you can come and have a nice look later if you like. But while I don't have personal experience in marathon running, I have read a lot about it, which, let's face it, is the next best thing these days. But what I have observed and come to understand about marathons is the sheer amount of planning and pre-race preparation involved. Marathon runners, they need to train, they need to get their nutrition and hydration right, plan their race, monitor their speed, they need to prepare for challenges like hills and things, set sort of a target time, work on their mental strengths, train their body and have the right mindset to complete the race. And looking back over my son's education journey and my participation in it, there's a lot of similarities there to my own experience. So just like a marathon, our education journey has been long, it's been hard, it's been exhausting, demanding, unpredictable, challenging, but ultimately it has been rewarding. Although I'm still waiting to receive my race medal because that'd be really cool to get a bit of race bling. That's obviously not going to happen. But like marathon runners, we need courage, energy, resolve, mental strength, flexibility, training. We need good nutrition. We need to practice. We need all those contingency plans from A to Z. And we need good tactics to be successful in this marathon education journey. Like any marathon, our education journey, we may face speed bumps. We may face changes in direction. We may face energy slumps, we will, because it's exhausting. We'll face disappointments, we all will. We'll face the barriers, we'll face hills, we'll face all sorts of obstacles. But what I've learned as we've braved this long journey ourselves is the need to be flexible and adaptable along the way. Things haven't always gone to plan. We've needed to dig deep and find alternative solutions. We've needed to use our energy and our time wisely, and we've had to decide when to fight and when to concede on certain points. We've had to be brave, we've had to take a leap, and we've had to, in the end, and this is the hardest thing, trust that our planning, preparation and practice would deliver the positive result that we were hoping for. So this is our marathon education journey, and it's not a competition. Some of you guys will have even longer ones, but for us we've had 4 main placements. We've had 4 transitions. We've had countless classrooms, schools, teachers, aides and classmates along the way. And we started at RIDBC, which is the Royal Institute for Deaf and Blind Children, when Xander was only 3 months old. So he started in there when he got his diagnosis. And he was in the early intervention program. And when he was 3, he started in their reverse integration preschool, which is catering for vision and hearing impaired students, but then brings children from the local community in as well. After receiving his autism diagnosis when he was 4, we had to make the really difficult decision to move him from that special education setting to another, to Aspect. We needed to learn more about autism and how we could prepare him for school since he was 4 and not far off. He ended up having a year in their base school, and then he had 2 years in a satellite class, which is an autism-specific class sitting in a mainstream school. And then we decided it was time to put him into mainstream. So he got to primary school, and he was in mainstream there from years 2 to 6. And, you know, we had our rocky parts there, and we'll go into that shortly, but largely that was a very successful setting. And a lot of that was because the school principal there was special needs trained, made a huge difference. She understood what we needed. But then after that, it was time to look at high school. And by this stage, we knew that he was quite a smart kid, so we decided to apply for the Gifted and Talented program at his local school, and he got in there. And he's in his 2nd year there now. So for us, it's been a long journey already, and we have another transition not far away in front of us, because he needs to move to the senior campus for year 11 and 12, and we're already thinking about that transition process now. We don't know what additional education options lie in his future, but we're hopeful that we can help him meet any future challenges just as we've faced the ones to now. So I want to talk a little bit about the milestones and the speed bumps along the way and what we've done to try and deal with those. So the first one was the rocky transition from RIDBC to Aspect, and it was not an easy transition for us at all. So first off, there was confusion about attendance, because initially we were allowed to have a 3-day, 2-day split, but that didn't happen. We thought that would be a lovely way to start the process and to make it easy, but that didn't happen. So that got us off on the wrong foot. And then we struggled with a completely new early intervention system, which was less funded and more confusing than the one we'd left. So I don't know about you guys, but we've always had to straddle the vision system and the autism system, and they're completely different. It was very difficult for us initially to get our heads around that. Then Xander struggled to get settled in, and we thought we'd made the biggest mistake in our lives making the move to Aspect. We really regretted it there for a while. But we eventually found our feet, as did he. And it ended up being the best thing we could have done for him, but we needed to ride those first rocky months. Aspect taught us how to better interact with our son. It taught us how to manage his needs and helped us understand autism. We also learned about advocacy. We learned about IEPs, and we were able to make connections with fellow families, and we maintain a lot of those to this day. So although it was a rocky start, it was the right decision in the end for us, but we had to stay the course to see that through. So a couple of years in, we collectively realised that he was ready to transition to mainstream. Basically, he was playing up in the special education class. He was pretty bored and being pretty naughty. But then when he went into the integration classes, he was this kid, he was really interested in and wanting to learn. So we realised that he needed to make that change. So we undertook a comprehensive transition process. We had school visits, we had assessments from Aspect staff who came out to the primary school. We did the funding applications, and we had really good communication with the local school. At the same time, our daughter had begun kindergarten there, and she'd received her own autism diagnosis. So we could see the supports they were giving her. So we were confident. We thought this was going to be the right move. I took 4 weeks off work at the start of the year. I thought, I'm going to be here, because we were literally lived around the corner from the school. I wanted to be there should anything happen. But all was well. He seemed to be coping well and enjoying class. I let out of breath as I returned to work, amazed at how well it went. Yeah, you know what happened next, didn't you? He was suspended within days of me returning to work. He'd been involved in an altercation with another student, and he'd hit his aide in frustration, and being violence, it was an automatic suspension in the New South Wales system. We were devastated. Again, we felt we'd made the wrong decision. And we had no idea what we were going to do if things escalated further. Our safety net was gone. We'd gone out of Aspect. We had nothing. We were devastated. But there was a silver lining, and I can look back now. At the time, I didn't see one. But the incident did teach us, it taught us to be more aware of policy, discipline, procedures, legislation, and it improved our advocacy, because I could not understand why they would suspend him when it wasn't his fault. But I had to understand the system. I had to understand, and I have to understand not to knock that. So I had to understand how to be a better advocate for him. But it also helped the school, because they worked with us to put in place better supports, because they truly understood his needs. For those 4 weeks, he was masking. He was being the really good, cool kid, and they thought, oh, why were you bringing all this stuff in? You're all hysterical about this. But they saw that the needs were real. They established a communication book. We employed a more experienced aide to help him. We introduced new visuals in the classroom, and we got Aspect back in just to make sure that we'd covered all the bases this time. It also reminded our son that he never wanted to be in trouble like that again, and to this day, he's never been suspended or reprimanded. He's actually the one that dobs other kids in now. But it was even though it was a really painful process, we had to look at the positives, and it did lead to some better outcomes for us along the way. Now, the next speed bump, we went through the process to obtain supports for him to sit the statewide selective academic high school. So we wanted to give him every opportunity. He was a smart kid. We thought, look, we want him to go to a selective high school. The issue was the testing authority would not allow standard special provisions that he'd normally have in NAPLAN and that he used in everyday life. So they were worried about maintaining the integrity of the test, so they would not, and they have a ban to this day on their page, on electronic testing, having a scribe, or giving extra time. And a lot of those things are integral to helping our students perform. We felt this was discriminatory, and it prevented disabled students from sitting the test on a level playing field. And I know for a fact it stopped students from considering sitting the test at all. So we did our best to obtain the provisions we felt was fair. We used the education standards, the acts, we had it all at our disposal to back up our case. Now, we didn't get all the provisions, we didn't get those 3. But we did get more concessions than we expected from them, because we were ready to step up and ask the question and put the case to them. In the end, we still had to appeal his result based on disadvantage, because they gave him these huge enlarged print forms, and the problem was in the time frame, the question was here, the answers were here, and he's here trying to work through. So it did disadvantage him in the test. And ultimately, he wasn't successful. But by that stage, I didn't care. It was a principle now. I needed to sort it out. Unfortunately, they still have those provisions banned to this day. And it was an uncomfortable reminder of the common assumptions and expectations around disability, because some of the conversations there was, why would people sit the test at all? Do you know what I mean? It was a really horrible process. But in the end, as I said, he was accepted into his gifted and talented class, which brings us to the last one, which was the final milestone so far, and it's the biggest of all. It was a terrifying transition. It was terrifying for me, because we were moving to a new school with multiple teachers, changing classrooms, more students, and different expectations. We worked hard with the primary school to put in place the funding application to support his needs, and I worked with the high school to introduce him on his own terms. We had those talks, we came up and introduced himself. We organised extra visits, we identified required supports that he needed for both the transition and beyond. We obviously obtained assistive technology to help him, and we tried to get them to get to know his strengths as well as his needs. And it took a lot of work, but it has ended up being a really successful transition for us so far. But it still requires regular communication to keep things running smoothly. We had a recent situation where they tried to put him automatically into a transition to woodwork class with no extra aid to help him. This child has a vision impairment and shouldn't be using, power tools. With that. And the worst of it was they hadn't consulted us. They, again, just looked at the fact, not good at maths, he has these diagnoses, let's throw him into this class. They didn't actually look at him as an individual and his needs. He's very academic, and we were able to sort that out. But it's just to show, it's a work in progress. We've always got to work to make things happen. But we were able to resolve that. We have a good system in place, and I think we do have a really good relationship with the school. So I've spent a lot of time so far talking about the challenges of the education journey and how long and hard it can be. And I honestly haven't done this to bring us all down. I just think it's really important to face the realities of our situation, our collective situation, and to know what to expect moving forward. So while it is a marathon journey, it doesn't mean it has to be unnecessarily arduous or painful for us. There are things that we can do to help stay the course, to keep positive, and most of all, practice self-care. And there are many ways to stay positive through the journey, and it's important to find something that works for you, because you know what, just like our kids, we're all individuals too. We all have our own needs and wants, so I think just take this as suggestions. This is not the be-all and end-all. But these things have helped us and helped me. So make connections. Making connections with fellow special needs parents has been a godsend. The friends I made way back in Xander's Aspect days are still supporting me today. My life changed when I found others who understood what we were going through. We all share similar struggles and we support each other through our individual challenges. A lot of our support now is online because we don't see each other as much, but we are going out to dinner in a few weeks. I'm very excited about that. But in the end, making connections with other parents or with people through support groups, with blogs, I've got a page, with family and friends, it makes such a big difference, and it does help you stay positive. If you feel understood and supported, it makes all the difference. Prioritise self-care. Now, I'm not talking about self-care as a half-day trip to the spa or a full day in your man cave playing games. That would be so awesome, but it's just not going to happen, is it? Because for most of us, self-care is something that needs to be squeezed into our already overloaded day. But it is important to prioritise it, even if it's just a 5-minute go at Candy Crush twice a day on your phone, or a hot cuppa when the kids have their screen time, or savouring a piece of cake when everyone's gone to bed. Sorry, Nathan, I have done that before. Self-care doesn't have to take a lot of time or effort. You just need to commit to a small act of self-care for you each day. And it helps me to have a plan for whenever I have time. So I always carry a book in my bag. I've got my phone with, games, mindless games on it. So it makes sense because of when I wait for appointments with my kids, etc. There's always those times. So think about those pockets of time. We need to look at time differently. We don't have a lot of it, but let's use what we have wisely. And I think it's really important to incorporate and prioritise self-care for our own positivity and our own health. Reclaim yourself. I don't know about you, but I'm collectively known as Xander's mum, or Charlotte's mum, or Ava's mum, or Mrs. Russell, if I'm lucky, but that's my mother-in-law's name. So I'm not often seen as Kirsty or as anyone other than a special needs parent. And it's easy for our own identities to be subsumed by our kids' needs, okay? It is. But it's vital we retain some of our identity and reclaim ourselves. So I've done this through blogging and speaking. So it's still connected to my kids and their needs, but it calls on my writing experience. It allows me to talk as much as I like. If you had have seen Xander's video, you would have known where he got that from. And it recognises my own qualities and skills as an individual. So if there's something you used to enjoy, or if there's something you've always wanted to try, look seriously about how you can make it happen. The only one stopping us from doing this is us. So it really makes sense, and it will help you to stay positive if you've got something for yourself along this journey. Favourite one, ask for help. Ask my husband. I'm still pretty hopeless at this one. Yeah. But I'm learning to be honest, and I'm learning to ask for help when I need it. Now, you may have asked for help before and you've been rebuffed. You may have asked for help before and you've been let down. Or you might be like me and you hate inconveniencing others, so you don't ask anyone. But we can't do it all, we can't. And anticipating when you'll need assistance will reduce stress levels and it will help you stay positive, especially through the really tough times. So it helps to be specific with our requests. So people will tend to respond more positively. So I might say to someone, can you look after my child some afternoon? But it's so much better if I say, I need help on this afternoon at this time, can you help me? So being specific will be better for you and we'll get a better response. It also helps to be proactive because it might not ever come to us if we just wait. Everyone is so busy themselves these days and people may not see our struggles because they're dealing with their own. So it really helps to be proactive and to be precise when asking for help. Write it down. No surprise here, I'm a writer and a blogger, this is my thing. But even if you're not a natural writer, writing down the good and the not so good things that occur along the way, it will help you stay positive. Writing down the good events is suggested by psychologists the world over. You might have heard them as gratitude journals and things like that. It does help, but you don't even have to write it down in a journal. I do it often on social media, And then you'll get your little memories a year later from Facebook saying, yeah, your daughter took a tablet, which I was hoping I'll get in a year's time. My daughter took a tablet the other day, it was exciting. But it helps to be positive. It helps to write those things down, as small as they might be. But it also is important to keep note of the not so good things, such as your worries and your fears. Because writing these down takes them out of your brain. Again, psychologists recommend this. So you can take them out of your brain, you've acknowledged them, and you can go and concentrate on other things. It can also put your fears and worries into perspective. When you write them down, often they lose the power they had in your brain. You've got them on black and white, you can start dealing with them. So writing things down can definitely help you stay positive. But most importantly, know you're not alone. Look around you today. None of us are alone in this. But we may feel isolated when we have the weight of our child's needs on our shoulders. We may be overwhelmed in the dead of night when reality wakes us up and stops us sleeping. We may feel like no one understands exactly what we're going through. But we're not alone. We're not alone. And this understanding has helped me the most. It's helped me stay positive. It drove me to start a website and a blog and a page for people to connect with others going through similar things. That feeling of loneliness and alienation can be overpowering and it can bring you down. But you're not alone. Believe that so you can stay positive and stay on the course for your child. Final part. So we've talked about assumptions and expectations, we've likened the education journey to a marathon, and we've identified ways we can try and stay positive along the way. So it's time to bring this all together and look at some strategies for school success. So these have been derived from my own experiences, but also from my previous life. I worked for 19 years in the Australian Public Service and I was a relationship manager for a lot of that. So a lot of this stuff is taken from there. But first off, parents are the experts in their child and schools should welcome parents as equal partners at the education table. It should be a win-win-win for all, for the child, parent and school. I think we agree this is how it should be. We should all be equal partners in this education journey, teachers, parents and students. It should lead to a win-win outcome where all our needs are considered and we all come away with a positive result. It may not be the positive result we all individually might want, but it's a positive result based on that partnership. But it can be hard to establish and maintain a partnership, particularly if you've experienced problems in the past. And I learned a lot from my nearly 20 years in the public service. And no, it wasn't about how to best jam the printer or the photocopier. I know that stuff is out there, but no. What I did learn is I learned a lot about establishing, cultivating, maintaining and improving relationships. I've been able to use these skills to create positive relationships with 4 schools so far. And I want to share some of these learnings today because I feel that we all need to be strategic when it comes to building and managing relationships on the education journey. So, okay. Introduce yourself. It's very simple, isn't it? But making the time and effort to introduce yourself to all stakeholders and talking about the executive, your deputy, your principals, your office staff, your teachers, your aides, your volunteers, counsellors, whoever is of importance or you need to encounter at the school. Don't wait to be invited. Make yourself known and show the school that you are ready to work with them to help your child. I ended up introducing myself to the high school after I'd waited for months to be invited to come up for a meeting between the primary and the high school. And I was encouraged to make contact myself after going to a positive partnerships workshop. And it was the best thing I could have done. And I ended up forging a really good relationship with the head teacher wellbeing, and it really led to a very positive transition process for my son. So it makes sense to introduce yourself. Take the time to listen to the school. Now, sometimes it is not easy to hear what others have to say, and it's not easy to listen to others when they have an opposing point of view. But it's important to still take the time to listen to their views and acknowledge them. It can be so easy to be ruled by our emotions and let our anger and despair take over. I've been there. Just ask Nathan, I cried, I think, for the first 5 years of IEPs. I couldn't not. But it's important to any relationship that we listen to each other and we acknowledge each side's point of view. You may not agree, but giving each other the opportunity to speak is really important. It's the foundation of a good relationship. And if we can model that and truly listen to the school, they are more inclined to truly listen to us. The key to successful relationships in the business world is to understand what a successful partnership will look like. So how will you know if it's been successful? When it comes to relationships with the school, it's important for you to know what the outcome is going to be. Do you want the outcome to be academic success or progress for your child? Are you looking for social inclusion? Are you looking for increased attendance? Are you looking for improved behaviour? Are you looking for extracurricular participation? We will all have different ways, different measures of success for our kids. Know what you're after in the partnership and set objectives and measures of success to meet them. And these will often be formalised in IEP documentation. They should be if they're not. But it helps to have a good idea of this yourself before talking to the school, because it'll keep you all focused. You'll be focusing on what you need to focus on rather than being directed and distracted in all different ways. It helps to put yourself in the shoes of the school when developing a relationship. I've benefited from being married to a teacher who can often make sense of the seemingly nonsensical to non-teacher me. I'm not alone. There's probably some things you just go, I don't understand why that happened. But if a decision doesn't go your way, you need to try looking at it from the other side. There's usually a good reason, even if it doesn't seem like that to us. So there's usually OHS, there'll be some sort of policy, budget, legislation. So looking at things from the other side, it also helps in determining the best way to approach the school next time. So if you understand the motives, you understand sort of where they're coming from, their point of view, you're in a better position to present your argument in a way to best meet those needs and concerns. It's tempting to go in all guns blazing when you have an issue with the school, but it's best to come armed with a possible solution as well. Don't get stuck in the negatives. Explain your issue, but also explore ways that it can be resolved. Share your ideas with the school and work with them to develop a solution. This will make it easier to deal with issues as they arise, and it will help you build goodwill between yourself and the school. The school will also be more inclined to listen to you and to your concerns and work with you to deal with them if you can suggest a way forward and you're not just focused on the issue itself. So it's really important to do that. Know your value. I had no idea of my value when I first started this journey. I was just a parent and I didn't think I could contribute much to my child's education. I wasn't a teacher. I had no idea about curriculum and things like that, no idea. But I was so wrong. We know our kids best as parents, and we should be valued for this knowledge. We should also be open with this knowledge with the school and consider ourselves equal partners in the relationship. It always helps to bring along, so your partner or an advocate or a support person, though, if you have meetings with the school, but never forget your value as your child's parent. The school is the expert in education, but you are the expert in your child, and that will never change. So always know your value. Sometimes you will hit a brick wall, even if you've gone through every hoop to get the result that you want. And it makes sense to get creative and to think of alternate ways to achieve a solution. So it might be that you talk to your network of friends and family about options you can take and different approaches. You might seek advice from therapists and specialists outside the school to get their take on things and get more suggestions. Also, don't forget to sell the benefit of what you're trying to achieve for the actual school and class themselves. Don't just concentrate on the benefits for you or for your child. This will also help you achieve a satisfactory result. And this approach has helped me in the past in getting solutions to issues with my son. So it really helps to try and be creative and think outside the box where you can. This is vital to any partnership, but it's vital that both sides follow up on actions and follow through with promises. This builds trust and goodwill, and it is the key to every successful partnership. If you say you're going to send through information, send it through. If the school promises to follow up with something and they don't, remind them. We need to do that. Get everything in writing. You probably all know this already, but it's a good reminder. So if I have a phone call with the school, for instance, I'll often follow up with an email just to make sure that I understood exactly what they were talking about. But this then starts a paper trail, and I have something to fall back on if something happens later on. Look to create a real partnership. And what I mean by this is don't go into interactions with the school seeing the relationship sort of merely as a transactional thing. We need to show that we're genuinely committed to the partnership. And that means sort of helping at the school where you can. And it might mean P&C, it might mean volunteering, it might mean doing reading, it might mean offering expertise in another way. I've got a friend who helped do the newsletter at the school. That was her expertise. That's what she could do and she could help with. The school will be more inclined to help when needed if you've shown you're committed to the partnership and want to contribute to the benefit of the school of the whole, not just your child. So we're all very busy, but if there's some way that we can do that, it does go a long way to building goodwill. Now, this can be tricky, finding time. It can be tricky with all the obligations. I know. I don't work now. I work from home because it's just there are so many things to do. But it makes sense to be available where you can. So obviously attend your IEP meetings, participate in parent-teacher meetings, be involved in school events, even answer school surveys, and keep in touch, with your child's teacher. It's hard to create a solid partnership if you can't find the time to be available, to be there for the school as well. So developing a good relationship is much easier when you are known, you're ready to meet and help out. So that's something just to consider in the process. So I just want to end with one of my favourite memes, and this one, I fully believe it. Our job as special needs parents is to find ways to work through the barriers so our kids can lead the lives they deserve. When the world says no, we can't stop until we've changed the answer to yes, or we've at least found a way around it. That was the bit I added at the end, obviously. So in the end, it's a long and hard road, but our kids are worth it. We need to believe in them and in their right to the life and education that they deserve. It's not an easy road, and look, it takes courage, energy, determination, mental strength, and resilience to get to the finish line. It's hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But on those tough days, the ones where it seems you can no longer keep going, remember why we're doing this. We're doing this because we believe in our kids. Believe in your ability to do this. Believe in your child's capacity to do more than anyone expects. Believe in the end goal. Because you, your child, and your family are worth it. We are all worth it. So that is me. So I hope sharing the learnings from our positive education journey has helped you today. If you want to find out more or get in touch, these are the ways to do it. I've actually got business cards as well, so just come and grab me if you want and I can give you one. So I have the website, and I have a Facebook page. It's quite active, so feel free to come on there. And I'm also on Twitter as well. And obviously I'm presenting a couple of workshops later today too. But look, thank you so much for coming along today. I think this is a wonderful initiative that the department and the Parent Reference Group have put together, and I really think this is the first of many successful ones for you. So thank you so much.